What's up, everybody? Back in the day of this year on Thanksgiving, and that is November of 27th of 2025, I posted on this channel a completely original lore-based story that will exist as the foundation for this YouTube channel. Now, though many of you have not seen that video yet, that is totally fine. I also have in the description below a complete readable format if you wanted to take time to do that as well. But today I'm actually going to take a moment of time to be able to discuss all of the inspirations and unique references to the story that I created when making the story. So without taking too much time here, let's jump right into it. So within this sheet here, I've already written up all the references. This is for the basis of me being able to look back at this in a historical fashion, but also for any of you to be able to look back at this and think, do I remember all of these references? It's going to be separated in two sections. The first one is going to be references of inspiration, and the second one is going to be all the unique characteristics within the story of AveyaZ. And ultimately, if any of this seems cool or interesting to you, then you would absolutely look forward to watching my video that I posted on this channel. So onward to section 1, and this is the references of inspiration. The first reference is going to be to SpongeBob SquarePants, and this is going to be based off of one of the characters in the story, specifically the jester, whose name is Falsa Veritatis Dator. I know, what a crazy name, right? The name Falsa Veritatis Dator is Latin for the false truth giver. And this just so happens to be a character that my cousin created using one of the friend portfolio activities that I have also made on this channel. And that is the My Reality character blueprint. So basically I had my cousin take the time to create his own My Reality character. And he just so happened to also do the same thing that I did, which is transform it into a fantasy story character. And at the end of the process, when I was going through it with him, I realized this character, Falsa Veritatis Dator, was going to be the perfect antagonist that I needed into the story. So of course, what did I do? I incorporated him in immediately. And some of the skills that he had written on his sheet, namely going to be ungodly competition and mood changing aura. I know, what a bunch of crazy names for this stuff. You know, it's just insane. These were some of the skills that the character utilized throughout the story, being ungodly competition was his ultimate skill. Then he also had a passive skill that was sponge fever. And I kid you not, this is literally, in literal terms, this is the form of the jester being a walking encyclopedia of SpongeBob jokes. Who comes up with that? Somebody very, very special. But special in such a perfect way that I needed. So there are multiple different points of reference where the jester will state SpongeBob jokes. And if anybody is a SpongeBob fan by any means, you're going to catch every single one of them. I guarantee it. And listed below, I have the majority, if not all of the moments of time where he does state SpongeBob references. Is mayonnaise an instrument? Firmly grasp it. I'm ready. I'm ready. The goofy goober. Bald. Bald. My eyes. I don't think I could do it that well, but he talks about himself being Dirty Dan. He's also referencing himself as a chocolate salesman and an undersea peanut. So there's a whole lot of moments of time where this guy sounds completely crazy and he's just a complete nut job, pun intended. But he is, without a doubt, a core member of the story. And within each of these moments of reference for these statements, I've also listed a slight description as to how it was played out in the moment. Such as, I'll give the two examples here. The one is when he's shouting out bald, and that, I believe, is a direct reference to the SpongeBob SquarePants movie with King Neptune being bald. And the jester is screaming out these words before immediately casting his ultimate technique, which is a transformation. Then when Falsa Veritatis Dator is saying, oh no, I'm Dirty Dan, this is a time when he's going to be within a courtroom setting, and it changes the perspective of this dark fantasy-like genre into an event that's relatively lengthy and turns it into more of a thriller into the courtroom setting, where inevitably this character is found guilty by law, but there's a lot of buildup that comes into this finally happening. So let's go down onto the second reference, and that is going to be the altar concept from Fate Stay Night series. And I've changed it a little bit by calling it the altar spirit. The story introduces an altar spirit from Nithra, and this is a realm, a mysterious realm, also called the Nebula Zone, that's full of monsters and has this slight dichotomy between a chaotic environment, but also, or as if a broken down civilization used to exist there. What does the altar concept do in the Fate Stay Night series? The altar perspective is a possession of an individual that creates a darker and more powerful version of them. In the moment of time when this occurs within the Fate series, the most significant one is going to be Saber Alter from the Fate Stay Night Heavensfield trilogy, whereas one of the protagonists of the story who is the saber class servant, is possessed by Alter, or rather falls in tribute to the Alter possession, thus becoming a hero who is corrupted by a dark force but retains the power, that the almighty power that she had, but then becomes a twisted variant of her personality. And within my story here in AveyaZ, Avant Zendelga, being the protagonist character, becomes possessed by this Alter spirit within certain endings of the story, because there are multiple. And thus, his name is Von Zegar Alter for this variant individual. Onto the third reference here, and we have general gaming RPG terminology. Two things. One is going to be the involvement of tier rankings, and two, the involvement of a mimic entity. Within my story, I utilize a tier 5 system that I have labeled out. It is a work in progress, but nonetheless, you can take a general grasp of how it works. From tier 1 beginner, tier 2 advanced, tier 3 elite, tier 4 ascended, and tier 5 god ranking. And it just allows a classification to exist, and it's a rather generalized staple in a lot of modern game genres. Now, the mimic entity is also recognized as the Nitherian, and the Nitherian is a certain specific species, or rather a tier 4 species that exists in the realm of Nithera. The Nitherian super being copies Avant, the protagonist, and is referred to as a mimic. A mimic boils back down to classic Dungeons and Dragons and Souls-like as a monster trope, and often as that fake treasure chest monster where you go to access the treasure chest and all of a sudden it's a monster and then you have to kill it because it's trying to kill you. Duh. But rather, in my story, I've created it as a twisted modernized void concept, being that it is one of the void touch species, as I call it, from Nithera. More on this one later on in the unique category as well. But now let's get on to the fourth inspiration here, and this is going to be from an RPG called Brave Frontier. Once upon a time, I want to say it still exists, but in other formats nowadays. But this was a mobile game RPG that I played growing up back in my later teenage years, and also through some of my years in college. So the reference name Zendelga, that is the protagonist's royal bloodline, is a subset from a legendary sword wielded by one of the 6 heroes, whose name is Vargas in Brave Frontier, and that sword is called Dondelga. So that's where that subset name comes from, Zendelga. The character Gazia also shares the name from Brave Frontier, and he's recognized as the Mad Heretic Gazia. Gazia is often associated with technology, different timelines, and acts as a nemesis in the game. And also, this portrays back to me in a way, because Gazia is also one of the names that I use as a secondary name in certain games that I go and play. Such as, if any of you know what League of Legends is, Gazia is one of my alternative accounts that I have. And lastly, the last reference to Brave Frontier is Zegar, which is affiliated by a name of Beast Zegar from the game. There's completely nothing special about this character in Brave Frontier, but the name Zegar was a perfect fit for Freya's last name, the second protagonist to the story. Then was created Freya Zegar, which it just sounds so good. Reference point number 5, and we have Fire Emblem Heroes and Fire Emblem Awakening. To the character, Gazia Zegar is a direct reference to Leaf, the lethal swordsman from Fire Emblem Heroes. Gazia is an alternate version of the protagonist from a destroyed timeline. He enters a contract with a higher power, Zarveth Zendelga in the case of my story, to slaughter the living and other dimensions to gather enough souls to resurrect his specific version of Freya Zegar, who ultimately met her end in that timeline. This is a direct mirror of Leaf from Fire Emblem Heroes serving Hell, which is the ruler of the Death Realm, to restore his own destroyed world and his sister Sharina. So therefore, ultimately, the character Gazia Zegar is a direct inspiration by Leaf as an alternate of Alphonse in Fire Emblem Heroes. Now, the second reference point is from Fire Emblem Awakening, and this is for Azusa Zegar. Azusa is represented very similarly to Lucina from Fire Emblem Awakening, where Lucina finds a way to travel to the past to change her tragic history and works alongside her father Crom. Now, how does this reference to the story? Future Azusa's timeline was nearly and utterly destroyed, but was led by one of the secondary characters in the story to a citadel within the realm of Nithera. Azusa ends up following Gazia, as she believes Gazia is the ultimate reason for the destruction of her timeline, and finds her way into the past to change the course of history and inevitably save her parents. It just so happens that the name Azusa is the name that I would ideally give to a daughter if I ever have one in the future. Who knows? Maybe I'll be lucky one day. Kingdom Hearts 2, reference point and inspiration number 6, to the character Zaldin that I titled as the Ravager of War in this story. The name is associated to the mercenary lord of Dragorn and that is Xaldin. Xaldin is a major antagonist from Kingdom Hearts 2. He's specifically part of the Organization 13, and he is number 3. Xaldin is known as the Whirlwind Lancer, and that is fitting for a character that is titled the Ravager of War in a nation focused on strength and combat, Dragorn. Reference number 7, and this is to Punishing Gray Raven, or PGR for short. And if any of you don't know what that is, then you need to think about Wuthering Waves, made by Kuro Games. The predecessor game to Wuthering Waves is Punishing Gray Raven. So how do I reference the PGR? There is a viral-like corruption that exists from Nithra, and this is a direct reference to the punishing virus from PGR, thus including the mimic-like capability from the Nithurians, which is more closely aligned with the Ascendants that can manipulate the punishing virus. And as a second parter, Avant Zendelga's appearance is inspired by Vonnegut from Punishing Gray Raven. And as you get towards the end of the story, it's rather ironic. Reference point number 8, and this is going to be the band Motionless in White. That is a heavy metal band. The assassin that is hired to work with Prince Valen, his name is Cypher Hex. This is directly associated with one of the band's newer songs, Cyber Hex, but misspelled. Yep, that's as simple as it gets. I wonder how many people would have ever catch that. Sometimes you just wake up one day and the first thing you know down, go with it. That's what happened there. Reference point number 9, and this is to the Warriors Orochi series, specifically Warriors Orochi 2. Zarveth Zendelga, in my story, his fighting mechanics and appearance are ultimately inspired by Orochi X or Shin Orochi from the Warriors Orochi video game series. He is one of the major antagonists of those games. Lastly, to any reference and inspirations of other concepts, that is the true ending. And a true ending is often associated within the heavy lore-based games where the perfect ending is achieved given specific requirements are met. More on that in the original concepts here. So let's get on to the second section now, and let's talk about the unique characteristics to my story, AveyaZ, from Birthright to Retribution. And into the first one, we have Chaos Resurgence and the Blood Rage Curse. This is a specific 3-phase system of the Chaos Bondage Transformation, which is recognized as Chaos Resurgence and exists within the Zendelga Royal Bloodline of Chaos. Phase 1 being Blood Pulse, a standard enhancement. Phase 2, Blood Lust, which is going to be the elite enhancement with body decay. And Phase 3, Blood Rage, often recognized as the Annihilator state, where the user is possessed by the spirit of chaos, characterized by a slow, loud heartbeat and black-red mana flares erupting around the body as if in corruption. There is a secret Phase 4 attached to the lore, and it's going to be recognized as the end, and this exists as one of the 5 endings to the story. It is the second worst outcome or ending to the story, if it occurs. Second unique characteristic of this story, and this is the Soulbound Ritual. This is the concept where every single direct descendant of the Zendelga bloodline can offer a soul binding contract to one other individual, thus granting them the power of Chaos Resurgence and becoming another member of the Zendelga bloodline. Aveya Zegar, the second protagonist of the story, she gains this from Avant, and thus not only does her appearance change by having crimson colored eyes and crimson colored hair, it's not an occurrence by birth like the direct descendants, but rather by surviving the grueling and incredibly painful ritual that is thus the bearing mark of the lineage and the incredible power of Chaos Resurgence. The third unique characteristic to the story is the independent copy mechanic. This is the ability for Freya and Avant, the protagonist characters, to split into fully independent copies, not just clones, independent entities of themselves, but they will specifically be wielding different weapons that they're capable of using. And that makes it distinct. Onto the fourth unique characteristic of the story, and that is going to be in reference to the emotional and technological courtroom event. Though the main genre of this story is going to be related to a dark fantasy, there is a rather lengthy moment of time, going back to the gesture, that involves a legal thriller aspect and thus reaches into the final arc of the story. Therefore, the post-climax relies on the unique fusion of magic, specifically Freya's amulet and her memories, with technology from the Mages Association's projection device to attempting clearing a name in a courtroom drama setting. Thus why I called it a legal thriller. and it's a wonderful way to really change up the story once you get to that after the climax. Unique characteristic number 5, and this is going to be Vantis Rendelga. He is the living DNA copy of the protagonist of Vantis Rendelga, hence the meaning the name is so similar. And this is also going back to the mimic that I was talking about from typical RPG style games like the Souls-like games. While mimics exist in gaming, Vantis is unique because he evolved from a monster that attacked the protagonist, the Nitherian. Not only copying his DNA, he gains sentience and eventually becomes an ally by leading a self-governing community of monsters in Nithra. Unique concept number 6, and this is going to be the Chronostyx and Agnosis magical seals. This is a grand duality tool between magical seals that really showcases a strong piece of the world building. What are they? The Chronostyx seal is a preservation of the target as if frozen in space outside of time, and this was utilized for godlike beings. Then there is the Agnosis seal, or rather called the Seal of Undoing, which erases the memory and mana, turning a powerful being into a monolith weak character without any memory. Very detrimental, and unfortunately there is a character that does become possessed by this. Unique trait number 7, and that is going to be the Zendelga Massacre. This is the climatic event of the story. And there's a really cool thing that happens here in this moment of the story, and that is there is a counter value throughout the event that dictates the overall importance and impact of the current event. These 2 specific value counters that are kept aside, building up as it goes, one being the number of the Z Legion members that remain alive, that is the protagonist party, and the other is the rising death toll count during the tragic event. Because ultimately, the Zendelga Massacre, it affects the entire world of Valaris. Unique concept number 8, and that is the Z Legion. The Z Legion is a direct symbolism reference to the Z names from the protagonist. I also happen to own a Legion series PC, and it says Legion on the side. Therefore, what better name to call the protagonist party besides the Z Legion? I don't know, but it's very fitting, and I went with it. Now you know why. On to unique characteristic number 9, and this is the first protagonist, Avant Zendelga. Avant is a direct reference to myself within a fantasy story. My favorite weapon choices are axes, if I can utilize them in a game, but never have I found a class that best suited what I want in current games. I created the Ravager class, as I've called it in the story. There is also a moment in time in the story where the protagonist loses his memories for a period of time. Kind of hinted to just a moment ago, and he finds his way into working as a government accountant for a small village. It just so happens that I personally have worked as a government accountant for the past 3 years in my life. Talk about cosplaying reality right there, huh? Yeah, who does that? Well, now you know. Unique concept number 10, and that is the protagonist to Aveya Zegar. Going alongside the first one, this is my concept and personality of a direct counterpart that would be ideal in my romantic life. Also, Freya is a beautiful name. I've said it so many times, not just on camera, but in general, Freya is a beautiful name. Unique concept number 11, and this is the Aveya Fusion. That is a direct reference to the channel symbolism of unity. The ultimate combination of the lore in the true ending is going to lead to the fusion of the 2 protagonists to create Aveya Zegar, the Ascended Resurgent. And this character, and in my YouTube channel, the Friend Portfolio Activity, my reality character blueprint was based on Aveya Zegar. It's also the name of the channel, AveyaZ. Now you know where it really comes down from. So it's not just a team up of the 2 characters, but a literal fusion of the 2 characters, creating a single entity and that symbolism of unity. And one of the biggest reasons why this occurs, because this creates a unique ability called the Blessing of Ascended Chaos. This allows 4 separate individuals to use full Blood Rage transformation simultaneously without the drawbacks of possession by the Will of Chaos, which ends up being the majority of the plot of the story, so you finally reach Retribution. On to the last couple direct references of the or unique concepts of the story, and that is going to be the number 5. I know, super odd, but stick with me here. There are several instances foreshadowing the number 5 throughout the story. This is all foreshadowing to the fact that there are 5, I don't know why I said 10, there are 5 unique endings to the story. Now, what are all the things that exist as the number 5? To starters, in the world building, there are 5 nations in the realm of Athen. Varelios, Nemira, Dragorn, Silvara, and Ferundel. And then outside of the realm of Athen, there are 5 outer realms. Nithra, Lazulun, Nocturos, Zorvale, and Verelion. In some of the major fights of the story, there are 5 distinct other members that fight alongside the Jester. Also back to the world building. There are 5 Nithra gates that lead to the outer realms, but also lead into, of course, Nithra. During the first World War concept called the Divine War, there are 5 surviving godlike beings after the war. These happen to be 5 of the original godlike beings that chose to side with mortals, therefore were allowed to remain and not be sealed away by the magical seals. The Jester is found to be juggling 5 clubs. I put this in because also one of my hobbies that I learned back when I was 17, 18 years old was to juggle. I thought that was just a kind of neat thing to put in there as well. In Silvara, the Jester is described specifically as juggling these 5 clubs while making jokes. And you know what's coming. It's that Sponge Fever. Here comes Dirty Dan. Then we get down to the 5 Summoners and the Reapers. During the invasion of Virelios within the story, this is a major event that occurs, there are 5 tier 4 master creatures, which are Reapers, that appear, followed by, shortly afterwards, 5 summoners that fight alongside the Jester, who is inevitably leading the invasion against Virelios. Towards the later parts of the story, there are 5 Agnosis sealed targets. When the team creates a tracking device to find Avant, sometime after a year or so following the climax event, the protagonist group locates 5 different targets around the world. 4 of them are false leads, and then there was the last one, which is Avant. And just before the event of finding those Agnosis sealed targets, there was a description of Freya's power ranking. When the protagonist party travels to the Trials of the Gods, one of the people there is the Keeper, who observes that Freya is currently within the top 5 strongest fighters of all of the people currently alive, though she ends up failing to achieve her tier 5 status at the time. Last but not least, the final unique concept to the AveyaZ story, and this is going to be the Zegar's duality event. This is the moment taking place during an intense situation that inevitably pans out how each of the 5 distinct endings occur. And there you have it. That is each and every reference and inspiration either directly to something else or a unique concept that I've identified within the story in my own terms. That was a lot of information that I just covered here, and I'm going to be honest, I had a really fun time creating this, and not only am I keeping this as a historical reference for myself, but this is going to be another sheet that's attached to a link that's going to be the video description and also the channel description. It's going to reach every single other sheet or tool that I've created on this channel so far up to this date. And let me know in the comments down below, how many of these references or unique concepts did you find cool or interesting in your eyes? And it just so happens, if you liked any of this stuff, then it is very likely that you will enjoy the AveyaZ story from Birthright to Retribution. The number one reason why I created the lore in all of these references was because, let me provide an example. In the future, if you're going to tell somebody a statement that resonates with another person, fantastic. But there's a better way of doing it as well, and that is attaching a character or attaching a basis point that's not just a statement. Words are phenomenal and very powerful used in the right hands. Now that I have unlocked all of these concepts when it comes to the lore, the world building, and ultimately establishing a story, then if I ever were to take statements that are motivational and directly going to assist other people, I can apply them in these concepts. Because truth be known, we are here to change the hearts of many, one person at a time. Thanks for being here. I'll catch you in the next one.